I'm extremely happy to have you all here because it means basically that we have achieved our ultimate goal by sitting down with our institution leaders, representatives of policymakers, and also the funding bodies. And we truly hope that we can start a fruitful dialogue with you. So basically, the aim of this session is twofold, and I know that there is too much in it, but I think it will still work out fine, and it's going to be useful for all of us. So first, my aim is to showcase to all of you some examples which can support the development of the profession, which can provide training, education, or even association, forming us opportunities. And then I will ask, so after the presentations, I will ask the representatives of the funding bodies, policymakers, and research funding organizations to sit here and to have a short discussion on what we see and what could we start. So I wouldn't take more time on the introduction, but I would like to give the floor to Bojan Vlaski, who is coming from the University of Banja Luka and who will tell us some words on how RMA profession can be strengthened in higher education institutions.
So good morning, everyone. My presentation is devoted to the strengthening of RMA's profession in higher education institutions. I try to be general, not to speak only about my faculty of law of the University of Banja Luka, but I will share also some of our experiences. I prepared a very short presentation, so I won't take a lot of your time. In the beginning, I would like to address some features of research at higher education institution. These are some basic concepts, definitions that are derived from the legal framework that exists in Bosnia and Herzegovina, actually in the Republic of Srpska, because as a complex state in Bosnia and Herzegovina, the entities, the constituent units have competence over the higher education. Higher education institutions are, as you can see, non-profit legal entities that conduct public services in the domain of higher education. And even the profit they make, it is used for their main purpose, the higher education. We can make division between universities and colleges. The difference is in the number of scientific fields that are studied and research that is done in these institutions. What is important for higher education institutions that they combine educational work, research, and doing projects for the benefit of the community where they exist. So these are three main components of work for higher education institution. And what is the most important is to make balance between these three activities. The main motivation for my presentation could be sum up in a sentence that we heard yesterday in the beginning of this very well organized conference. The words by Mr. Gregor Balas, CEO of HETFA Research Institute. He said, "We are not satisfied with the number of Horizon Europe projects we are working on in this region, not only Visegrad 4, but also in Western Balkans." And the same applies for my institution, the Faculty of Law. We never implemented any of Horizon projects, Horizon 2020. So these are one of our main ambitions in future period. We do have faculties at our university that implement Horizon projects that are very active, but in the legal field it's not the case. So we are trying to change that. There are many difficulties that we face as a research institution. In the beginning, lack of information. Our researchers are not very well informed about the possibilities for research, the funding, networks, etc. We are trying to change the situation, especially at the university. We heard it tomorrow. We have excellent staff at the university level, and they conduct very well attended courses, especially about Horizon Europe program, but also about other programs. Also, there is a possibility for internal networking at the institution, at the university, for example, exchange of experiences from those colleagues who already participated in the project. So that's the way how we can tackle this first difficulty. Another difficulty is lack of experience. As I said, with less implemented projects, it's hard to try to even think about implementing the new ones. And the opportunity to tackle this problem is by networking. And this network that has been created by this project is very useful for us. Also, we heard it, I think, many times yesterday, lack of confidence. I was thinking, should I put it in the presentation or not? But that's a fact. That's a truth. Many of our researchers are not confident enough, probably because of this lack of experience. So we should build this experience by promoting research, using experiences from some other associations that we participate in. For example, the Faculty of Law is member of European Law Faculties Associations. There are other law faculties that has experiences in research projects, so we should use this. Also, a work disbalance between education, research, and projects, as I mentioned before. There is a huge pressure on researchers to do the teaching. A lot of classes every semester, and there is not enough space to organize well for doing projects, particularly these complex projects like in Horizon Europe. We can change that. We can advocate for changes in legal framework in order to make more balance between these different tasks. Another problem, insufficient and or incompetent staff. Why insufficient? We do have staff, as I already said, at the university level, very quality staff in regional terms, but at the faculty level, for example, at my Faculty of Law, we do not have administrative support for doing research. Not at all. We do have administration, financial administration, HR administration, but they are not qualified to support the researchers. So all the burden falls onto the shoulder of researchers and me as a Vice Dean for Science and Research at the first place. So that's something we should try to change, to at least have one person in administration, and we are discussing it just a few days ago. I discussed it with our Dean. We must have such capacity, at least the most simple one, with the help of our university, with the help of the ministry. We can change things for better. Also the competency. What is the problem? I think it's in most of East Europe, most of the staff, especially older generation, don't speak foreign languages, or maybe Russian, they taught it in school. Some speak German, but very little number of them speak English, for example, which is necessary for doing European and international projects. So we can invest in language courses. We are actually having language courses at our university provided by the Faculty of Philology. And in the end, low quantity and quality of research. As I said, not too many research projects. Quality is also at stake, and we at the Faculty of Law, also at the university a few years ago, and from this January, our Ministry for Science and Higher Education and Information Society are building the system for rewards for excellency in research, publishing in indexed journals, also doing international projects, working on international projects, and in the end, participation at international conferences. So we have built a system similar, we are building actually at our faculty. We are about to start with the internal competition procedure next month, this April, and the plan is to motivate the academic staff, just similar to the institution from Hungary, which Ms. Tamás, I think, if I'm not wrong, spoke yesterday. So we are planning to create a system where we will have, in the first place, information where our academic staff publish their articles, which projects they work on, and so on, and reward them for excellency. And we hope that system will work. At the university level, it works. Here is the Secretary General of our university. He can confirm that every year there is more and more productive scientific work which is rewarded by our university. Improving funding opportunities. That's one of topics from the subtitle of this session. There are many opportunities, as you can see. I won't speak about them, each of them, but there are opportunities, but there is, as I said, lack of information. What can be the problem are also the national funds. Here are some data from the year 2018 from one of the UN agencies, and you can see differences between the countries. So in the countries like Bosnia and Herzegovina, where there is a very low percentage of expenditure of GDP for research and development, there are less chances for excellency in research. So that is also one part of the problem. How can it be solved? Among these available fundings, we could propose, for example, we could learn from experience of Visegrad countries. Just last year, if I'm not wrong, there is one initiative in the Western Balkans called Open Balkan for the beginning between Serbia, North Macedonia and Albania. It's in the first place, economic initiative, but it could develop into something that could support also research and to create fundings similar to Visegrad 4 grants that could be available for research institutions in these countries. Also, this initiative has perspective of covering all the Western Balkan countries. Creating RMA networks. There are many opportunities for networking, and we discussed it yesterday during the dinner also. And my approach is to start from the beginning, from the roots, from the institutions. So there should be, at the first place, internal networking, share of experience between the RMAs at the specific institutions. Then, thank you for the time. I promised I will be in time. Also we should use these agreements between the higher education institutions and other actors, because there is also industry that participates in research projects. Another opportunity for networking. There is a necessity for strengthening the existing networks, such as the network of national contact points, and creation of new networks, like this one. This project is intended to live even after its end, so we have established a network that is available even online. Starting point for networking, beginning from the institutional level, are analysis of the existing cooperation documents, policy papers at the national, European, and other levels. Also, these analyses can help to identify possible partners. And I'm finishing my presentation. Importance of RMA's association. We had a presentation about the European Association of Research Managers and Administrators yesterday, and I will repeat it again. We should start from the beginning. Not all the countries in Europe have organized these networks and organizations, and it should be also a bottom-top process. We should start from our institutions, from the national states, and then network with European and international networks. That's all from me today. We can discuss it, of course, later.
Thank you very much, Bojan, for this wonderful introductory presentation. I think it gave a very good framework to what we will discuss on. And now I would like to give the floor to Jan Andersen, who is currently working at the University of Southern Denmark, but he was kind of father of best prac, and also he had a very important role in ERMA and so on. And all these experiences will be summarized in this short presentation.
Thank you very much, Virág, and thank you very much for inviting me to come here for giving a short presentation. I think it's been wonderful to see you all, I've decided to take a look a little bit on does it actually pay off to professionalize? I will start with just a small slide from myself. I've been, when I started as a research manager and administrator, nobody knows what it actually was. I went to my boss and said, what I am actually supposed to do? And he said, well, that's what we hired you for, to find out. So that's what I've been doing throughout my whole career. So what I'm going to present here is also based on my own personal experience and my own personal development through research management and administration. The core of what we are doing is for researchers to improve quality and quantity of research for the benefit of society. Through the I would say, you always say that through the last year there has been a development, but this development is actually always ongoing. So if you look at what research is looking into, it's a number of challenges they have. So they have a lack of funding, they have competition for funding, they have all these constraints from policies and politicians to try to, who have demands on how to write their applications and justify what they are doing. They have to follow a lot of requirement and requests legally on ethics or describing gender aspects of their applications and so on. Of course, a researcher is not capable of doing this themselves, so that's why we are the enablers who actually can facilitate this process for researchers to be able to do these things, to meet the demands from the funders, to meet the demand from society, and to meet the demand from their institutions. That is our role, to be a facilitator or enabler in this process. And that's also why you have to look at professionalization in 3 different levels. So you have to look at it in an organizational or institutional level, saying, okay, what is actually the problem here? And you can look at it from an individual perspective. So what is actually, why do I need to professionalize? What can I benefit from it? And then there's the whole profession. What is the professionalization? Where is it leading to? Where does it go? So that's what I'm going to talk a little bit about now. So first of all, this is an OECD graph, one of the typical ones, and you can see that this is the investment in research as a percentage of GDP. And you can see it's an upgoing curve from a number of countries. Just to be all the countries, except for those up on top, all the countries above the United States, they are the Scandinavian countries. So it's Finland, Sweden, Denmark, and Norway. So the one of the main problem, and I think that maybe also relate to what Bojan said here, is that the need for Europe to actually step up and actually invest in research is radically. And some countries are doing very well, but a lot of countries are not doing so well. So I think one of the messages we can keep on saying is that invest in research. It's for the benefit for not only for the country, but it's also an investment for their institutions and for researchers, for retaining and recruiting good researchers. Because we are in a huge competition. So this is the development in the GDP in total over the years. That means that this relative growth that we saw in research is actually huge in terms of resources. And those resources comes because of especially China and other countries have a huge development. And they will drain all the resources, they will drain people, and they will increase the competition for funding in our countries. And also, as I said, the money for research is often very much in competitive funding, so we have to be better and sharpening our ability to compete. So then if we look at it from an individual side, the research managers have become professionalized in the sense that there has been a definition of what is a research manager, and I think Susie Polly had a really good presentation yesterday on that, so I'll not go into depth with that. But there are also these networks, as Bojan also mentioned. They can be used for developing your professional skills in certain ways and even get a certificate. And I think that one of the things that the foundations could do, the funding foundations could do, is actually to request that they have professional research managers on their projects to be able to support the research, to enable and facilitate the impact of this research. So this is just some slides about best practice. What does best practice actually do? Because best practice was actually a professional development project in itself, actually enable through output-based learning and through a practical approach and through the notion of equality, that we are all equal, even though we come from the Scandinavian countries with huge experience and a lot of people, we are actually equal because we have the same challenges as everyone else have. Basically, the slide that Bojan showed on his challenges for his institutions are exactly the same as mine in a small country in Denmark. It's just a scale that's a little bit different. So we are moving on an equal scale, so to speak. Also the networking part and breaking the barriers for research administrators in being able to be involved in the international community and learn and gain this knowledge is crucial to be successful, and to gain the necessary know-how to actually transform it into our institutions and to change our institutions, not only approach to research but also facilitate the researchers to become better and more have more self-esteem and be more self-confident in the international research community. Then you can also say that for the profession, this is also about how do we then establish and form our network. So we have these different associations coming up. There are not many national associations for research managers in the Visegrad and the Western Baltics, Western Balkan countries. Western Baltic, that's me. So I would say this is also maybe something that I would recommend. Start building those networks and start formalizing them, because you can actually do something that where you can build on your own experiences and your own challenges rather than just the international network or the other associations. So having your own can also define where are your specific needs. And that's about definition of who are the research administrators, create awareness of the profession, establish a legal foundation for how do you actually interact also with legal bodies. So a funder can go to one university and talk to one research administrator. If they could go maybe and talk to an association or an organization instead, that could be a more, it could create a better dialogue. For example, in Denmark, we are having an agreement with the National Research Foundation that when they present a new procedure in applications, they ask the network in advance, the Danish Association for Research Managers, will this be a good procedure? Will this be a good format to maybe a new way to give out money? And they ask for advice. We have a yearly stakeholder meeting with all the major private funders where we can share our knowledge and know-how. And we can do that because we are a community and we can act as a community towards these bodies. And that could also then lead to the recognition of the profession in the institutions and strengthen the competencies and qualification through training that can be offered in this network. I think that if we look here in this room and yesterday and today who was actually giving presentations here, most of them actually had been heavily involved in best practice and learn to be giving a presentation, learn to be in an environment, improve their English capacities and so on. So it's also creating this platform for learning people to interact or act with confidence in an international environment. Then I have last, and that is something that is not very often mentioned, but of course you are all invited to the IAMA conference, and I think all of you maybe are already aware of that. But I'm actually running a pasta making workshop together with Susie, who sits down there, because it is not about learning to make pasta, but it's about learning to work in a team, to learn how are the different roles and challenges that you are when you have to work together with people you don't know. And so it's about personal capacity building, the personal skills. So I will highly recommend you to sign up for this workshop, to go beyond just being an expert that knows everything about the rules and regulations, but also be a human that can interact with the researchers and your colleagues.
Thank you a lot, Jan, especially for this special invitation for the pasta making workshop. I've already heard about quite some of it, but probably this year I will have a chance to try it as well. So thank you, Jan, also for the experiences and the recommendations. I think they give a very good basis for further thoughts and discussions. And now I would like to invite Jaroslav Sip from the Czech Technical University based in Prague to share your experiences from a kind of regional country.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm very happy to be here and finally meet some people I know from the screen for 2 years in person. I was asked to give a presentation on research management in Czech Republic, and I'm involved, or I got to be involved in the field as a fresh graduate of the university already in 2003 when I finished my studies of culture and social anthropology, which is very weird, considered that I'm working with the money and researchers in artificial intelligence now. During my career at the university, I literally was on every possible position there and started. This is a lot simplified CV. And I started at the Institute of Lifelong Learning as a reseller of the courses, but in 2004 structural funds came when Czech Republic joined EU, and nobody knew what to do with that. And then they have found there's such a habit at the university environment that whatever, like the academic part, do not know what to do with. They give it to a secretary or some assistant to solve the problem and keep their peace of mind. So during all my career, I was getting the stuff nobody else wanted to do, which made possible that I grew up on that, on solving the problems, and end up as a director of a project center. And the project center, when I was leaving the university in 2018, was covering pre-award, post-award, IPR, and technology transfer. And yesterday I had a discussion with some of the colleagues here whether that is a good setup or not. And my position on that would be that it's a good setup, and the reason is that the technology transfer, if you are ahead of that, or ahead of all the life cycle of the projects, actually, you can make the technology transfer be there when the application is prepared, and avoid the surprise when the projects are about to end. And they come to technology transfer, they say, well, we have these results, and we promised to do this or that with that. And you have to explain, well, that's not possible. You can't promise such stuff. And in 2019, I joined RMA as a member of External Relationships Committee, and still until the end of this year, I'm Encura member of Select Committee on Global Affairs. And like that gave me the opportunity to see and visit the people all around the world, and I can confirm that everybody is solving same problems. This article is from 2011. Unfortunately, it's not true for most part of the world. The author is happy to say, gone are the days when research administrators were deemed to be just a clerical, non-academic function. Like, unfortunately, not everywhere, but you can see the situation where all of us started, or most of us started. This is the milestone in my eyes of Czech path to birth of the RMA profession, because the demand of structural funds was something very new to the Czech academic environment, and suddenly researchers realized that they are not that they would have to stop doing their research to manage all the projects they were coming through structural funds. And we already experienced 4 7 years long periods, and but when it started, it was like very modest. We entered in the half or in the middle of the programming period, and the money dedicated to human resources in research or in the universities, there were very little. It was a very small part of one operational program starting on 30 million euro. But then in 2007 and 13, well, in the period 7 to 13, the major boost up came, and it was altogether 4 billions of euro which were invested into the Czech research and research infrastructure. It brought many good stuff, but also the consequences which were not so good. I will mention them later. These days, the national investment into research is like little more than 400 million euro per year. So it almost doubled up the yearly expense the state gave for the research. And as far as I remember, one of the numbers here was that Czech Republic is investing almost 2% of the state budget into the research. It is because they made the structural funds part of the state budget so that the numbers would look better. It's not like all the national money. It's including the operational funds or structural funds. And since the 2013, the government was still able to maintain like almost 3 billion of euro per the programming period, and which again is doubling the amount of the research, of the money coming to the research. Well, the obstacles we have, the rich national funding, even though some people at the universities, they claim is still not enough. But we can see in numbers that people actually do have enough, because they are not so keen to ask for like the real research European money, which is Horizon. They tend to say, well, but we have this structural funds, and that is European research money. And I don't know, because you don't compete for them on a European level, you compete for them in a national level, and you can't pretend it's the same. So it's like second-class research money, but they don't want to hear that. When the other obstacle is when you want to build up, or we want to build up, or anyone want to build up the research or grant department, research services department, it's difficult when you don't have enough of projects, because people, the staff there, they need some critical mass to learn from. And if they do not have enough applications per month or year, then it costs you money, but the learning goes very slow. And other thing, the leadership, it seems, is done outside of the universities, and the universities or research, it suffers from them. So you can't read which institutions are here, but this is University College Dublin, and the most important part here is this circle, which actually we can understand as a leadership ability. The blue part is when the PIs are in the leading partner position, and the red part is when they are partners only in the projects. And you can see that in Ireland, which is a rather small country, and at the edge of Europe, because there's nothing, there's like sea behind the borders, not in the country, but like compared to them, we are like a middle of Europe. So there are people, industry everywhere, but Ireland, it's an island in the sea, so everything is more distant and no neighbors. This is Czech Technical University. You see the blue part is very, very small. It's like 6%. This is Charles University. It's something like 12%. And this is Masaryk University in Brno. They are over 25%. And they are actually, in my eyes, the one university which was able to utilize the structural funds money, because they not only spend that, but were able to bring PIs from abroad, and you can see the difference in here. Well, on the national level, what could be done for the profession is certainly cultivation of research services environment, so that people like us feel wanted or needed. Thank you. Give a general support to the RMA profession, systemize the education for RMAs, harmonize the policies of different ministries in case each ministry has some research budget. This is like a tricky part. And unify the interpretation of legislation, because my experience is that each granting agency, each ministry has a different interpretation of the one and same law. This is a picture I love, because it's from one of my old archaeology teachers. And originally I thought this is the relationships between the services on one side and the academy on the other side. But the more time I spent in the university environment, I realized like you can actually explain what you are doing to your researchers, but sometimes it's very difficult to explain it to your management. And especially when like my management was in 2018, like 17, 18, I got a new rector or vice rector or somebody above me like every 6 months. And they came to me, I was like, what are you actually doing? And so I explained, but in the next 6 months I had to explain again, and it got very boring, because they are the management. They should know why we are there. And if they don't know, then they shouldn't become rectors or vice rectors. So this is my position on that. Yes. So on the contrary, if you have such enlightened management who knows why you are there, that's sort of a blessing. And that's all. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Jaroslav. And I fully agree with you that it is not only important to explain to your researchers what you are doing and how they can benefit from your services, but it's also important to ensure that your management is aware of this and your management provide the support. I just, of course, mixed up the line of presentations because I'm having a prezi, so I asked the support of the technical team.
I hope it works with the presenter.
So my aim was to introduce you to another project that we are coordinating and how this project was generated. And basically, when, as it was mentioned by our CEO Gábor Balázs yesterday, we realized that there is a huge European competition for huge money for research, innovation, education, and other type of activities. So we decided to get engaged in this competition. But how? You need people who have experience, who are writing the proposals, who are supporting the writing of these proposals, and also, once you have the grant, they can manage it and make the report as sound as possible. So this is why we initiated a project, because we just couldn't find those people, even from running organizations, who are aware of the possible and available EU funds. And who know all the tricks and tips how to deal with them. Of course, this was back 4 or 5 years ago. Since then, quite some things have changed, even in Hungary, but still. The other side, I had the inspiration from Prague, from the community. So we were like, okay, why not to start a project or kind of a joint activity in which we can work together to ensure that we can make university students aware of the profession, and we can somehow make them motivated to get engaged in the profession. So this is how we elaborated this project, which is funded by the Erasmus Plus Fund. And it started in 2019, and as we are just arriving to the end of this project, by the end of this year, we have quite some outputs already available and wonderful experiences with our partner countries and our partner institutions. So as you see here, we have 3 universities from 3 different countries and 5 different research organizations or think tanks, consultancy companies. Besides that, we have a wonderful advisory board, many familiar faces from today and yesterday. But they are crucial importance in spreading the word about the project and also contributing the quality of the outputs. The objectives of the projects are seen here. So basically, first, we wanted to see whether there are any good practices in the field of education of research managers and trainings of research managers. And in fact, what we have found that throughout Europe, there was not a single study program for future research managers. There were a few, very few, for those who are already in the profession, so postgraduate programs, but nothing for those who can possibly start a profession after the graduation. So we decided that even if there is non-existent good practices or only from the field of training or postgraduate education, we will develop innovative tools, methods to ensure that we can give a glimpse on the profession and some knowledge for those students who are coming for this course. But of course, coming from the business sphere, because HETFA is a private research organization, for us it is always one of the crucial aspects to ensure that we are doing something which will be used afterwards. So within the project, we decided to fill the gap between the needs of the employees and what the universities give to the students, so to provide such activities which will smooth the transition to the labor market. And last but not least, as all of us want to do, to provide a better recognition to the profession. And we thought that this educational program could have an important role in this. So what have we done in the last 3 years, and what are we still doing? There are quite some nice buzzwords from the EU project languages, but what is more important, that first, of course, we collected good practices, but as I told you, there was not a single education program which could have been a basis for us, but of course some important trainings which have been already presented, RMA certificate training program, or some from the US, or a postgraduate program from Portugal, which were analyzed and their main strengths and weaknesses were pinpointed. This was an important knowledge to elaborate basically the international module, which is the core output of our project. It consists of two parts. So first there is a curriculum for the students and a teaching material for the teachers who are teaching it. The curriculum and this whole module is set up in a way that it lasts for 2 semesters for university students coming from any fields basically, so it doesn't matter what is their main fields of study, but they can take this course, an elective course. And our university partners elaborated the curriculum, which is divided into 4 different modules, and then the teaching materials supporting the interactive seminars, innovative way of teaching, non-formal educational methods, and the use of the project-based learning were aligned to it. And now I can say that it has been already tested in the previous semesters, so there are already students who accomplished it, and we have very, very good feedbacks from them. It was very hard to set up the structure of it, the content of it, because we have quite some limitations what we can offer to the students, but based on the feedbacks, what we elaborated works very well. But a very important thing is that beside the knowledge that we wanted to provide them, a specific focus was put on skill development and the capacity development. And as the course started last spring semester, so during that period we had online teaching. So the course was tested in this online learning environment as well. Then in the fall semester, it was taught in person. So I would say that both ways of teaching was tested and worked out well, and all the materials could support the achievement of the goals. And as I told you, it was very important to fill the gap between the university and the labor market demands. So there is a mentorship program which will be tested this summer. Selected students from our universities will go to our partners research support offices, which is basically an international mobility for them, backed up with a blended learning approach. So they will get first-hand experience from our colleagues, who have also the possibility of developing their abilities in leadership, in mentoring, in coaching. On the other hand, the students will benefit an in-depth amount of knowledge and experience from research support office work. Besides our main target group, the students, we also wanted to ensure that anybody can use our results. So this is why we developed this online learning material platform that you can find on our website. And basically the curriculum is transformed there in a way that you yourself can go through it. So any RMA who is just starting his career or her career can go through it and gather some knowledge. On the most important knowledge. And besides that, our partners are developing some very nice gamified and interactive exercises to make your knowledge more in-depth and to test your knowledge. And at the end, you can go through a test and get a certification if you pass the test. And last but not least, what we also agreed in one of the yesterday's session, that monitoring is crucial. So it's not only important to do the activities and set up the strategies and set up some KPIs, but you have to monitor it. In addition to this, we also implemented some impact assessments. So basically, we are trying to assess the impact of each and every project activity. And why it is important? Because it will feed our final report and the recommendations that we will share with stakeholders. Yes, I'm just... as we are getting closer to the end of the project, we have already managed to assess and gather some short-term impacts. And they are represented at various levels. So the students reported that they are now better aware of the profession, they get motivation to go for it, they really like project works, and they could improve their relevant skills and knowledge. The teachers who were teaching the course and also some researchers who were involved, they also got a better understanding what is the profession and what RMAs can provide them. So it was also important from this view, and of course they could also extend their skills by holding the classes online or in person through all the innovative and interactive platforms. And lastly, the university administration and leadership get also a better understanding of what research administrators are doing. On the other hand, they could enlarge their teaching portfolio. So what is coming up to sum up my presentation in this year? We are holding finally in-person events as well in this project as well, and our aim here is to present what we have done, to validate with our audience and target group stakeholders, and prepare the ground for the transfer and the adoption. So we would be really glad if other universities could take into consideration to introduce this teaching program, this educational module into their course offer, and use what we have developed and worked on for quite some time. You see here that the next meeting will take place in Lisbon, so it's open event, anybody can come, and the registration is already available. Then we will meet in Ljubljana in September, and finally in Brussels to gather all the relevant stakeholders there by the end of this year. So that's for our project I wanted to share with you. And now I would like to invite our experts and the representatives of the funding bodies to take a seat here and discuss a bit further the topic. We are having here... Oh, yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much. So we are having here, first of all, Branka Savic, who is head of department at the Ministry for Scientific and Technological Development of the Republic of Srpska, Bosnia and Herzegovina. Then Dr. István Szabó, the Vice President for Science and International Affairs from the National Research, Development and Innovation Office. Till that time I leave the space to arrange the space. Then we are having the representative of the Visegrad Fund, Mr. Daniel Péter. I have to turn the page. We also invited Sinisa Marcic, who is coming from the Regional Cooperation Council. You already know him from the starting session as well. Then Maximilian Strimi, who stayed here instead of going back to Bratislava, although he would have a meeting with his leadership. So he's vice rector from the Slovak University of Technology in Bratislava. And last but not least, György Márquez, who is Secretary General at the University of Banja Luka. And my agenda is not updated, unfortunately, because we have here the representative of the Danube Transnational Program as well, Jonathan Halligan, sorry. If you have still some space here, please come here, and I will just go down. What I would like to ask from all of you, once you are all here, and we have this wonderful panel, is that please introduce briefly your related activities that could be taken into consideration with regard to supporting research support staff for raising the excellence of these kind of professionals at not only higher education institutions but in businesses. And if there are any activities or any outcomes that you as a founder or a representative of an institution which is relevant to the field would prefer to have, would expect from this kind of professionals, what would you like to do, what kind of outcomes would you support, what would be useful from your view? So this is the question. Shall I repeat it? So basically first, brief introduction, whether there are any relevant activities that you are doing, that you are supporting, and then what would be appealing for you, what kind of activities could get funding possibly, which could contribute to the recognition, to the raised excellence of research managers, research support persons, or support the associations, or trainings, or development of education, or anything that has been highlighted basically by our presenters, or even beyond. So there are no limits, I would say. So if it's fine for you, I would set this order and start with Maximilian.
Okay, hello to everybody. Regarding the activities, or maybe from another point of view, already Thomas said something about our new law, which recently passed in the government, and we are waiting for the signature of the president. Related with this activity, also the university is taking part in the process of setting up new internal legislatives and procedures which have to be made somewhere by the middle of the next year. So this is the main core of our activities, to set up new rules supporting research managers, scientists, teachers in their career, in submitting all the proposals, and build up an effective and attractive and stimulative environment. Particularly, it means also for example, extra bonuses for the success, or for the successful projects and successful scientists and researchers. Based on the comings from the European Commission and Horizon Europe program, we can make it at the international or at the university level for all the faculties. So it could be interesting for you also. I hope it will be done by the end of this year. So it could be it could bring very high motivation to our researchers and teachers to submit the proposals. I hope so. So this is one part of our activities which I can introduce.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Sinisa.
Well, since I'm representing Regional Cooperation Council and our main geographical field of coverage is the Western Balkans, Let me share just a few thoughts about what we've done over the last couple of years and what we plan to do in the next months, so to say. First of all, in our previous session, I talked about how our innovation research system, ecosystem, is rather underdeveloped. It's in many ways in very nascent phases. There are differences between Western Balkan economies. Some economies are doing better, some are lagging behind. And that's why it's quite challenging to identify and create design measures that could cater to the needs of all Western Balkan economies at the same level, so to say. But over the last year, for example, we've introduced a couple of interesting measures that seem to be well received around the region. The most recent one was a training we supported for national contact points on research and innovation. Actually, two of our trainers are here present in this conference. The training was tailor-made for less experienced NCPs who have been appointed last year, and it turned out that most of these NCPs are not as knowledgeable as one would wish them to be, to put it diplomatically. In many cases, they simply don't know even the basics, let alone some nuances around various programs offered by the European Commission, so Horizon Europe and some other sub-programs. And we had Luke in Kovaya from the European Institute of Innovation Technology. Very few people know about the IT and KICS. Eureka network as well is lagging behind. So this proved to be very, very good one. And actually, the reason why I asked Sean the question yesterday, if you recall, is because I wanted to understand what would be really necessary for both NCPs, but also people like you in our region that lacks this kind of capacity building. In many cases, RMAs tend to be kind of marginalized, and they have to find ways by themselves. There's no systemic approach. And that's why I would actually aim to introduce another program as a follow-up to the previous one that would cater to the needs of RMAs and NCPs. Something related to evaluation, to let people know what evaluators look at when they evaluate project proposals, so NCPs and RMA can actually advise, offer proper advice to their end users, such as researchers, businesses, innovators, whoever. Last year, for example, we also introduced tech transfer support for the Western Balkans. Again, it's kind of borderline between what RMA people do and researchers and business, of course. Again, that's very nascent, so there's lots of things to be done in this region. And one exclusive news for you today. Just an hour ago, the Regional Cooperation Council announced the regional call for the Butterfly Innovation Awards. We have 6 categories, and I'd like you to spread the news, if possible, to people you work with, because we want to encourage innovation culture, broadly speaking. I think that would suffice to start with.
Excellent, thank you very much, Denisa. Daniel?
Okay, it works. So quite a few questions. I would probably start with the easiest answer. So what is it that we support? We support whatever we receive. It means that we have regular grant calls, and of course our support depends on what exactly is that we get from our applicants. And the thing is that in the past 20 years or 21 that the fund has been existing, innovation and research has not really been one of the top focus areas that we had any projects in. I think it's kind of understandable because the whole idea of the Virág Fund came as an organization that mainly focuses on education and cultural exchanges. So the whole idea that we should also go into this field, it came a bit later. But the thing is that even if we are really trying to promote it and we have research and innovation among our focus areas constantly, the number of project applications we receive is really not that high. And which is quite sad because if you compare, for example, our application system with those of, for example, European funds, I think I can fairly say that it's very simple. It's completely online, digital. There is almost no bureaucracy. The thing is that you have to understand, of course, is that we cannot compete and we don't want to compete with the big funding schemes. So what the Virág Fund does is to give you the first kick, for example, to start the actual cooperation. Or if you already started it, then we can help you with capacity building, exchanges, scholarships, all those little things that normally you would need the human power, you would need lots of resources that you cannot really get easily from other organizations. We can give it to you. What we expect in return is to have a proper regional added value here. So as a Virág Fund, of course, I'm talking about involving partners from the Virág countries. Currently, the minimum is having 3 partner organizations from the region. But also what is really important for you guys here is that we are also very open to Western Balkan countries, so they can be eligible applicants, they can be eligible partners in our project. So it's absolutely open to them. And we would be actually happy to see more projects from the Balkans, because when I looked at the statistics, I could barely find any that we have as an applicant organization from the Balkans. And of course, I understand the reasons why, because as I was following Bojan's presentation about the issues, I mean, we see it quite clearly. And also those projects, those few that we have in the field of research and innovation, and mostly implemented by universities, we see how difficult it is for the actual researchers to concentrate on also project management. And this is why it's good that we are here in this conference, because also for us at the fund, it's important to see what is what are the actual challenges here, and then we can maybe be a bit more open to this kind of initiatives in the future.
Thank you a lot. István?
Yes, for Hungary we set an ambitious goal actually to our potential beneficiaries in the Horizon Europe program. I mentioned you that we had about exactly 0.65% of Horizon 2020 fundings. And from the Horizon Europe we would like to get 2.18%, which is basically a 3 times multiplicator. And what we are trying to achieve with this, that we would like to try to motivate the innovation community to go as international as possible. As it was mentioned by the presenters themselves as well, it's not a very easy task, because in many cases in Hungary as well, there are ample funds for higher education sector, and also there are certain language barriers. So for instance, English is not a language which comes by nature to our beneficiaries, I would say. But anyway, what we're trying to do on the level of exact measures is to train our NCPs to be better, actually, again in line with the previous comments. And also we are trying to involve the evaluators who already have on-hand experience in the Horizon 2020 projects and in the current Horizon Europe projects, to share their ideas. What are the current buzzwords, I would say, in the Horizon Europe projects, which you have to use to make sure your application will be successful, and what are the tips and how to build a consortia, etc. So these are sort of training sessions which our office currently is basically providing.
Excellent, thank you a lot.
Realizing growing importance of professional working, I can say, on crossroads of science and management. We have no special grants for support research managers and administrators, but we have some grants that can use. We must support research managers and administrators in gaining new skills, exchanging knowledge, and achieving more recognition for their profession. But we have problem, maybe we have know the exact number of administrators and research managers, because there are no association, and we didn't know their needs. But we, in the future period, we do some analysis, and we can adopt some legal framework, etc.
Clear. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. That's important, Branka. Thank you very much. Georgia?
Well, I'm coming from a university which is small, medium size, 15,000 students and roughly 30 million euros budget. So you can create some magic in short time. But let's say the main strategic step was, in 4 years ago when we started created, let's say, mini pillar 1 at the university, starting to fund the excellent science and identifying small scientific niches, as Sinisha mentioned. So steering board provided additional funds because there is always the budgetary constraints on state level. So we managed to find additional fund with 2 strategic goals. To fund the excellent science, mainly the basic research, and to raise the level of international scientific cooperation. So in the last 4 or 5 years, we managed to triple the scientific production, not just in scientific papers. We presented the results end of the last year, and those scientific production was mainly in health sciences and natural sciences. We have the problem with the social sciences and humanities, which is, well, let's say, 2 or 3 steps behind. Another strategic goal was to create additional institutional support at the university level. So we hired several people like Angela and create a special center which are trying to promote European programs like Horizon or etc. I'm the former NCP. I started with, let's say, 17 years ago as an NCP and a program committee member. And I remember when we started to promoting the FP5 and FP6, less than 10% of our researcher was aware of framework programs. So in my, let's say, 10 years of job as an NCP, I just try to promote the European program to our researcher. So now, right now, we are in sense of Sean McCarthy's slide, we are now between phase 2 and 3. We are promoting, but we are diversifying the different support mechanism. So Angela and other people at the university using different instruments, promotion, technical support, trainings. Sometimes I even involved as a former NCP and program committee. So there is certain results. We managed to get a first project as a coordinator role, which is really strong effort for us, especially for the RMAs people, working in legal and financial office. It's quite challenge for us to create good reports, to provide certain technical support for our researchers. But you have to use different instruments in our case, different instruments to raise their interest, to identify the research niche, to identify which research groups are suitable to invest additional funds. It's our experience. So there is results if you create smart strategic approach. And you have to be prepared to see the first results, not in a short term, but let's say after first 5th or 6th years, you will receive the good results. So this is our experience.
Thank you a lot, and I can confirm this works in the way in the long run. Yeah, Jonathan.
So, firstly, good morning and welcome to all. I'm from the Danube Transnational Programme, based here in Budapest. It's the Secretariat is here. We cover 14 countries, Central and Eastern Europe, and the Balkan countries as well. So I think this fits in quite well with the what you have here, the project that you've had and the network. Question is what we have which is relevant. Well, we're starting a new period in line with the funding period, and we're likely to have a call in September of this year. Within that, we have our usual way of working, is we have different priorities, one of which is termed a Smarter Europe. Now, within that, you can apply for funding from partners throughout the 14 countries on these specific priority areas. So a Smarter Europe, and that will include things like skills development for smart specialization. It will include circular economy. It will include Industry 4.0, matching up smart industry with old industry. But within this, what we, listening to the presentations that you've provided, we could see for research management and administration particular aspects around, Jaroslav was mentioning the role of the industry-facing technology transfer, knowledge transfer aspect. And that's more the area that we'd be looking at in terms of what we could support. We're finalizing the details of the priorities at the moment, and we'll shortly have those. But certainly, yes, there's some scope there, but it depends on the approach that you want to take. So it wouldn't be the type of professionalization courses as a whole, but there may be parts of that, aspects of that in developing skills, processes, ways of working in terms of this industry-facing support. Yes.
Very good. Thank you very much. Thank you all of you for pinpointing very important issues. What I understood in some cases that you kind of complained, that even if you provide opportunities, they are not known by everybody. You don't get the necessary amount of applications, for instance. You also mentioned that the RMAs themselves are not that much visible, so it is hard to reach them out. So my question is basically, what would you expect from us, and what could you provide? So, I mean, if there were communities, and as we see, there is community here, and even in your institutions, and you also trying to provide support them. So the question is that are you open to be partner? I mean, if we are organized, and if we are ready to help you, and if we are ready to provide input to all of the different organizations which are here present, are you open to such kind of consultations and kind of joint work to ensure that we can support you in bringing in the important aspects, and not only our community, but of course the researchers, the innovators as well, and also to serve you with other information which is necessary for you. So this is the question. I wouldn't suggest again to go one by one, but if you have any ideas or any kind of good advice or recommendation, how could this take place? What could be done? Then please grab the word.
Okay, can I?
Yes, of course.
Break the ice. We, as the Regional Cooperation Council, we are a political organization. We're not a donor type of organization, and our funds budget for allocating support to our partners around the Western Balkans is rather limited, and that's why, and this is what I mentioned in the first panel. That's why we try our best to get on board partners who can support. Now, after listening to István and Daniel, if I'm not mistaken, I immediately see some overlaps and some room for cooperation. So in my view, I think the best thing we can do as a community, I'm talking about you here and us who can support in some way or form, is to listen to your needs, identify those needs, and then tailor-make programs that actually assist your needs, instead of doing what top-down approach usually does. From those ivory towers, people up there, think they know what's best for you. That's usually, the best way to fail. So in my view, I think it'd be good if you could, communicate to us, well, the RCC, but perhaps to some other organizations, with, a list of your needs, and then we decide on how, if we can assist, and how we can do it. And I'm a big, fervent, supporter of the idea of, laying a wall brick by brick. In many cases, people, at least in our part of the world, tend to create or build a house from roof, and then everything collapses after the project collapses. And this is something we shouldn't be doing. We should be listening to the real needs and then designing instruments around those needs to build slowly the ecosystem. For example, last year we introduced what we call on-demand innovation support for the Western Balkans. So Western Balkan economies can get back to us with a list of their needs. We can't assist with all, of course. We don't have that money. But perhaps I can talk to Istvan, for example, and ask whether there's a way to somehow chip in some funds or other ways of support, not necessarily money, to assist people like you or other stakeholders in the innovation ecosystem.
Thank you, Sinisa.
Maybe if I can, from the opposite side, from the university, not the policymakers, but I totally agree with you, Sinisa. We are trying to listen our researchers and our research managers, and to implement the procedures which can help them in our environment. What is, from my point of view, what is important to do? Maybe it could be also the common goal of all the representatives and all the parts. It can be, you were talking about the best practices, for example. I think all our policymakers can adapt best practices to a national academy, university, research institutes, and so on. It could be very helpful also for the universities, because to break some laws, to break some directives, to break some habits which are implemented in our environment, it is very, very hard to break it down and go through. We are not talking only about one law. We are talking about the whole laws which are around the university and around the researchers and the research projects, and also around the policymakers.
Very good. Branka, you want to add?
Ministry is open to be partner, is open for consultation with research managers and administrators. I have one example of good practice. We introduced a new program, new grant for support the productivity of our researchers. And last year, in the COVID period, we have increased the number of published work papers in the recognition journal. And but I must say that we have a program for support participation in EU programs, and I'm not satisfied because we support making a project application, and we have a small number of application for our grant, but we have money. But we have no, and we expect, Ministry have expectation from you and your colleagues to be more creative, more worth in their job.
Very well noted. István, please.
Yes, your question is a bit funny because the only answer is yes. Otherwise, I don't know, we would have been the news that I have been lynched or something like this. But jokes aside, actually what we are trying to do in policy level, and I'm pretty sure that most other countries does the same, but without saying this so frankly, to be very honest, policy works in a two-folded way. There is the sort of carrot-like policies and the slash-like policies, you know. So when you try to motivate the colleagues to behave in a way that the innovation ecosystem will flourish somehow. And what we did actually that in our domestic innovation fund schemes, where you basically get funding from the National Research Innovation Fund for your project, so it's totally Hungarian money, but at the same time we incorporated that when we evaluate your project, there is now a dedicated part that you should have a certain level of success in the Horizon Europe Framework Program. So this means that now each entity has to make some dedicated efforts to make sure that it makes a good application, and it's not just I will hand in an application on something and a blank paper, but you have to have actually some result. We can accept if it is not if it doesn't receive funding from the EU, because yeah, that's life, but it should have a certain level actually. And with this, I would like to highlight that there will be a need for services like this in Hungary at least, and we all know that for the European projects you need to have international cooperation as well. So this network could be very much used for building such cooperation networks. And for each potential beneficiary, the first question is basically how do I build the collaborations, how do I build a consortium, and this is the heart of the added value which lies here with the colleagues.
Thank you very much. Any other comments or ideas? Daniel, please.
So I think at the beginning you said that, so what can we do to understand each other's needs, something like this. So my advice would be, if you want the donor to understand your needs, go to the donor and tell them what your needs are. And sometimes it doesn't work. It works with us because we are very open to consultations. We invite our potential applicants to come to us. And this is also important because of the fact that first, we don't, as I said, we don't have that many of those applications. We would really love to see more. The second is that even if we receive applications, most of them, unfortunately, don't really go through our evaluation because we don't understand the logic of it. So you can have a wonderful idea of a research, it can save the world, but you have to be able to put it into a framework of a project that makes sense from a project perspective. So it has to have outputs, outcomes, it has to have some kind of a benefit for the region itself. And this is where we can help you to identify those goals if you come to us for a consultation. Because we really, as the fund, we don't want to tell you, you know, we are not the experts here, you are the experts. So if you have a need, you need to put it in a form that we, so-called laics, who have no knowledge of the field, even we understand what you need, and then we can give you the support that you require here.
Thank you.
I forgot to mention, in my opinion, the main problem with administration is English, and it's a big problem for administration.
Yeah, even yeah.
Yes, just to mention, we will also have consultation opportunities, etc. But I'd like to just step back a bit really in terms of how close the understanding can be. So programs differ in terms of the direction that they set and how that's set. I think it's very important to understand that process and as far as possible to influence that. In other words, to go out there, meet people, get involved with some of the strategies, in our case, the Danube region strategy, the people there, the priority area coordinators, and understand it. It's very important. I think many of you know this, but the way that the program is guided, the direction it takes, the intervention areas, the priorities it decides, and the types of activities it's looking for are decided in these discussion processes, task force meetings, and outward questionnaires as well. So it's important to get the importance of your approach known in that process, because once the program is set up, it's very difficult to change. They will have those priorities through the program.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jonathan, as well. Before closing this session, I'm just looking at the audience, whether you have any questions to our wonderful panel or comments or whatever.
Well, it is not as much a question, but it's maybe something of a comment, because I feel that you are all talking a little bit about that there's lack of knowledge and information, and how does the system, the EU system, for example, works. But I've just been doing an analysis to find reviewers for a project in artificial intelligence, and I was looking through the list provided by the Commission, and I could see that extremely many people from Central and Eastern Europe were actually evaluators, and that's because it's it's much more profitable to be an evaluator from Central and Eastern Europe than it is from Western Europe, and actually you have a huge base of people who have been evaluating projects in all fields actually, who are really good experts, and they can be really good source for sharing best practices, but also learning, maybe becoming partners in projects and be coordinators of upcoming projects. So just to say that you actually have a huge base that could be utilized.
Thank you for adding this. And it was basically mentioned by some of you that you rely on the experience of evaluators, but probably it could be even more widespread. Any other questions, comments?
So some of you are funders or funding bodies. My experience is, when I compare my country and US, is that in where I'm from, the grant agency, like those people, they are sitting there waiting for applications. But when I'm communicating with US agencies, they are actually visiting the labs and trying to search themselves actively for the researchers, so that they would be proud that they do fund the best researchers. So I'm wondering which ones you are, and if you are like my nationalists, then I would wish that you become like the US ones.
Thank you. Any reflections on that?
Yeah, since I'm representing the Hungarian funding agency, I'm obliged to answer. Well, I would say that below a certain quantity we can do that. For instance, just for the basic research grants, when we are dealing with project ideas for really blue sky research and the like, above a certain funding level, we do hearings on the research proposals. But here we are talking about quite a few proposals, for instance, for the postdoc phase, to be very honest, not with that much big of money. So in that case, we take a look at the paper solely. So it differs. But for the major projects, we do that. And we also have really big projects like this one again in the roll-up. I mentioned the second time is the Industry University Cooperation Center, where we actually have a system in place where we basically have a hearing on a quarterly basis on how the project goes. And we from the office are also members of an advisory committee. And also representatives from institutions outside the university are there. So we do that. But of course it can be done efficiently only above a certain level. I myself always visit laboratories actually because research infrastructures are my favorite pets in the innovation ecosystem. And we also put great emphasis on them. We just had, for instance, a publication on the Hungarian research infrastructures, if that might be of interest. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? Then thank you a lot for all of you for being here and sharing your thoughts and reflecting on our ideas. I took note, so we will come up with wish list, what we want. Also, we will reach you out with the possibility of consultation, and based on the huge base of our experts, it's not a big deal to develop best practices which can be useful for policymakers and the institutions themselves as well. So thank you a lot again for being here, and stay in touch.